Sorry, got interrupted there. Now at this instant, he glanced up at the sky, hoping for a moon or stars, but no moon, no stars. He started talking to himself to bring himself the night into focus, willing coherence, but the effort would only cause distortions. Out beyond the wire, the patties would seem to swirl and sway. The trees would take on human form. Clumps of green grass would glide through the night like sappers. Funhouse country, trick mirrors and curvatures and pop-up monsters. Take it easy, he'd murder. Easy, 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 but it wouldn't get any easier. I could actually see it. I was down there with him, inside him. I was part of the night, the land itself, everything, everywhere. The fireflies, patties, the midnight rustlings, the cool phosphorescent shimmer of evil. I was atrocity. I was jungle fire, jungle dreams. I was the blind stare in the eyes of those poor dead dumb fuck ex-pals of mine, all the pale young corpses, Lee Strunk and Kiowa and Kurt Lemon. I was the beast on their lips. I was Nom, the horror, the war. Creepy, Azar said. Wet pants and goosebumps. He held out a beer to me, but I shook my head. We sat in the dim light of my hooch, beats off, listening to Mary Hopkin on my tape deck. What's next? Wait, I said, sure, but I mean, shut up and listen. That high, elegant voice. Sometimes when the war was over, I'd go to London and ask Mary Hopkin to marry me. That's another Nom. That's another thing Nom does to you. Turns you sentimental. It makes you want to hook up with girls like Mary Hopkin. You learn, finally, that you'll die. So you try to hang on to your own life. That gentle, naive kid you used to be. But then after a while, the sentiment takes over and the sadness, because you know for a fact that you can't ever bring any of it back again. You just can't. Those were the days, she sang. Azar switched off the tape. Shit, man, he said, don't you got music? And now, finally, the moon was out. We slipped back to our positions and went to work again with the ropes. Louder now, more insistent. Starlight sparkled in barbed wire. There were curious reflections and layerings of shadow, and the white moon and added resonance. There was nothing moral in the world. The night was absolute. Slowly, we were dragging the ammo cases closer to Bobby Jorgensen's bunker. And then, plus the moon, gave a sense of approaching peril, the slow belly down crawl of evil. At 0300 hours, Azar set off the first trip flare. There was a light popping noise, then the sizzle out of the front bunker and sizzle out in the front of bunker 6. The night seemed to snap itself in half. The white flare burned 10 paces from the bunker. I fired off 3 more flares, and it was instant daylight. Then Jorgensen moved. He made a short, low cry. Not even a cry, really, just a short lung and throat bark. There was a blurred sequence as he lunged sideways and rolled toward the heap of sandbags and crouched there and hugged his rifle and waited. There, I whispered. Now you know. I could read his mind. I was there with him. Together we understood what terror was. You're not human anymore. You're a shadow. You slip out of your own skin like molting, shedding out your own history and future, leaving behind everything you ever were or wanted to believe in. You know you're about to die, and it's not a movie, and you're not a hero, and all you can do is whimper and wait. This now was something we shared. I felt close to him. It wasn't compassion, just closeness. His silhouette was framed like a cardboard cutout against the burning flares. In the dark outside my hooch, even though I bent toward him, almost nose to nose, all I could see were the glossy whites of Azar's eyes. Enough, I said. Oh, sure. Seriously. Azar gave me a small, thin smile. Serious, he said. That's way too serious for me. I'm your basic fun lover. Then he smiled again. I knew it was hopeless, but I tried anyway. I told him the score was even. We'd made our point. I said, no need to rub it in. Azar stared at me. Poor boy, he said, the inflection in white eyes. An hour before dawn, we moved into the last phase. Azar was in command now, I tagging after him, thinking maybe I could keep a lid on. Don't take this personal, Azar said cheerfully. It's my own character flaw. I just like to finish things. I didn't look at him. As we approached the wire, Azar put his hand on my shoulder, guiding me over the boulder pile. He knelt down and inspected the ropes and flares, nodded to himself, peered out at Jorgensen's bunker, nodded once more, then took off his helmet and sat on it. He was smiling again. You know something, he said, his voice wistful. Out here at night, I almost feel like a kid again. The Vietnam experience. I mean, wow, I love this shit. Let's just shh. Azar put a finger to his lips. He was still smiling at me, almost kindly. Here's what you wanted, he said. You dig playing war, right? That's all this is. A cute little backyard war game. Brings back memories. I bet those happy soldiering days, except now you're a has-been, one of those American Legion types, guys who like to dress up in a nifty uniform and go out and play at it. Pitiful. If it was me, I'd rather get my ass blown off for real. My lips had a waxy feel like soapstone. Come on, I said. Just quit. Pitiful. Azar, for Christ's sake. He patted my cheek. Purely pitiful, he said. We waited another 10 minutes. It was cold now and damp. Squatting down, I felt a brittleness come over me, a hollow sensation, as if someone could reach out and crush me like a Christmas tree ornament. I was the same feeling I'd had alongside Song Trabong, like I was losing myself. Everything spilled out. I remembered how the bullet had made a soft puffing noise inside me. I remember lying there for a long while, listening to the river, the gunfire and voices, how I kept calling out for a medic, but how nobody came, and how I finally reached back and touched the hole. The blood was warm like dishwater. I could feel my pants filling with it. All this blood, I thought, I'll be hollow. Then this brittle sensation hit me. I passed out for a while, and when I woke up, the battle had moved farther downriver. I was still leaking. I wondered where Rat Kiley was, but Rat Kiley was in Japan. There was rifle fire somewhere off to my right, people yelling, except none of it seemed real anymore. I smelled myself dying. The round had entered at a steep angle, smashing down through the hip and colon. The stench made me jerk sideways. I jerked and clamped a hand against the wound, trying to plug it up. Leaking to death, I thought. A genie swirling out of a bottle like a cloud of gas. I was drifting upward out of my own body. It was half in and half out. Part of me still lay there, the corpse part. But also I was that genie looking on and saying, there, which made me start to scream. I couldn't help it. When Bobby Jorgensen got to me, I was almost gone with shock. All I could do was scream. I tightened up and squeezed and tried to stop the leak, but that only made it worse. And Jorgensen punched me and told me to knock it off. Shock, I thought. I tried to tell him. I tried to say shock, but it wouldn't come out right. Jorgensen flipped me over and pressed a knee against my back, pinning me there. And I cried, kept trying to say, shock, man, treat for shock. I was lucid, things were clear, but my tongue wouldn't fit around the words. Then I slipped under for a while. When I came back, Jorgensen was using a knife to cut off my pants. He shot in the morphine, which scared me. I shouted something and tried to wriggle away, but he pushed me down hard on my back. Except it wasn't Jorgensen now, it was the genie. He was smiling down at me and winking, and I couldn't buck him off. Later on, things clicked into slow motion. The morphine, maybe? I focused on Jorgensen's brand new boots, then on a pebble, then on my own face floating high above me, the last things I'd ever see. I couldn't look away. It occurred to me that I was witness to something rare. Even now, in the dark, there were indications of a spirit world. Azar said, "Hey, you awake?" I nodded. Down at Bunker 6, things were silent. A place looked abandoned. Azar grinned and went to work on the ropes. It began like a breeze, a soft sighing sound. I hugged myself. I watched Azar bend forward and fire off the first illumination flare. Please, I almost said, but the word snagged. I looked up and traced the flare over Jorgensen's bunker. It exploded almost without noise, a soft red flash. There was a whimper in the dark. At first, I thought it was Jorgensen. Please, I said. I bit down and folded my hands and squeezed. I had the shivers. Twice more rapidly, Azar fired up red flares. At one point, he turned toward me and lifted his eyebrows. Timmy, he said, such a specimen. I agreed. I wanted to do something, stop him somehow, but I crouched back and watched Azar pick up a tear gas grenade and pull the pin and stand up and throw. The gas puffed up in a thin cloud that partly obscured Bunker 6. Even from 30 meters away, I could smell it and taste it. Jesus, please, I said, but Azar lobbed over another one, waited for the hiss, then scrambled over to the rope we hadn't used yet. It was my idea. I'd rigged it up myself. A sandbag painted white, a pulley system. Azar gave the rope a quick tug, and out in front of Bunker 6, the white sandbag lifted itself up and hovered there in a misty swirl of gas. Jorgensen began firing, just one round at first, a single red tracer that thumped into the sandbag and burned. Ooh, Azar murmured. Quickly talking to himself, Azar hurled the last grass grenade, shot up another flare, and then snatched the rope again and made the white sandbag dance. Ooh, here's chanting, starlight, star bright. Bobby Jorgensen did not go nuts. Quietly, with dignity, he stood up and took aim and fired once at the sandbag. I could see his profile against the red flares. His face seemed relaxed. He stared out in the dark for several seconds as if deciding something, and then shook his head and began marching out toward the wire. His posture was erect. He did not crouch or squirm or crawl. He walked upright. He moved with a kind of grace. And when he reached the sandbag, Jorgensen stopped and turned and shouted out my name. And then he placed his rifle muzzle against the white sandbag. O'Brien, he yelled, and he fired. Azar dropped the rope. Well, he muttered, show's over. He looked down at me with a mixture of contempt and pity. After a second, he shook his head. Man, I'll tell you something. You're a sorry, sorry case. I was trembling. I kept hugging myself, rocking, but I couldn't make it go away. Disgusting, Azar said. Sorriest fucking specimen I ever seen. He looked out at Jorgensen, then me. His eyes had an opaque, spiritless surface of stone. He moved forward as if to help me up, and then he stopped, almost as an afterthought. He kicked me in the head. Sad, he murmured, and headed off to bed. No big deal, I told Jorgensen. Leave it alone. But he led me down to the bunker and used a towel to wipe the gash at my forehead. It wasn't bad, really. I felt some dizziness, but tried not to let it show. It was almost dawn now. For a while, we didn't speak. So, he finally said, right? We shook hands. Neither of us put much emotion into it. We didn't look at each other's eyes. Jorgensen pointed out a shot-up sandbag. It's a nice touch, he said. You almost hand me. He paused and squinted out at the eastern patties, and the sky was beginning to color up. Anyway, a nice dramatic touch. Maybe you should go into the movies or something. I nodded and said, that's an idea. Another Alfred Hitchcock, The Birds. You ever see it? Scary stuff. We sat for a while longer, and then I started to get up. Except I was still feeling the wobbles in my head. Jorgensen reached out to steady me.